some scrawny nerd. He says, "At one time I beat up Khabib." Okay, and then you have a response. Okay, you look her right in the face and you say, "Shut the fuck up, bro. No, you didn't." And all the cred is all on this guy. Okay, it's just his face. It's him. It's his personality. The entire proposition, all of this information can be dismissed as the delusions and the ego and the pettiness of this retard and this loser, right? So it can be easily dismissed. This is, this guy is a fucking liar. He's not credible. He's just bullshitting me, and that's the end of that, right? Okay, now let me show you another scenario, okay? Okay, so like some shit like this, okay? Like, let's just say there's some shit like this, right? You can even... Damn, fuck. Okay, I guess that... We can even have the, the CPI logo, right? Just fucking... Okay. All right, so I've given you one interaction. Okay, so the first interaction was this guy, bragging about how he beat up Khabib, some like crazy shit, right? And then this guy, the whole thing just goes back to this guy, right? So he's just like, this guy's not credible. I'm going to dismiss that piece of information. And it's just a reflection of this one person, right? That's it. Another interaction is like a cult, right? And, we could be guilty of this as well. We should do self-criticism so we're not like this. some kind of cult coming up to someone and saying, and blah, 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 blah. And then this person being like, okay. And then they look into it and it all goes back to like this guy, right? It's just like all this guy. So it's just like this guy shit. Okay. So it's like a specific type of like embodied authority here. And it just this guy, this guru who just knows it all, right? This could be the LaRouche stuff. Anything, honestly. It could be any like organization that's like this. You see people like sometimes on the subway, they're handing out newspapers, they're handing out something else, or Bob Avakian or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, this all traces back to the consciousness of like this, Fallon, whatever. It all goes back to like this one guy, But why is Marxism different? Why does Marxism invite so what's the dialectic here? Okay, the dialectic is this guy trying to spread his shit, this guy being like, who are you? And then this guy saying, look into it, and then it ends here with this personality. See, in this interaction, this guy's like, hey, I beat up Khabib, and then this guy's like, okay, fuck you, and then it's over, right? The dialectic here is different. A Marxist will talk about Marxism. Joe Schmo will express skepticism. The Marxist will make an appeal maybe to the big other, and that will actually lead Joe Schmo to overlook this Marxist and be like, hey, a lot of people are talking about Marxism. A lot of people are taking it seriously. There is this like thing going on. And that opens the horizon of the dialectic of relating to Marxist consciousness in a way that, clearly surpasses the horizon of like this one person who happened to tell Joe Schmo about it. So oftentimes you'll see libertarians and you'll see right-wingers and Republicans trying to pin down Marxism to the fanciful personality or conceits of Karl Marx, and they'll try to like mock Karl Marx, but Karl Marx is dead. They don't really ever have a boogeyman or a straw man to nail Marxism to. So how do you account for its trendiness and popularity as like a big other, right? And Marxism is one of the only comprehensive outlooks that have this ability to kind of reflect, the disembodied logos. Disembodied collective logos. See, one of the limitations of infrared or our movement is that, like, we have not yet become this. Now, this can involve personalities. For example, the Groypers become this because they made Nick a meme. Because they made Nick a meme, he has ascended to this status within cultural consciousness. But Marxism is here. It's a disembodied collective logos that is just non-reducible to any specific individual or personality. Now, if you're a materialist, interactions are based on interactions between people. And Marxism cannot be tied to a specific person. So this is the sense in which thinkers like Alain Badiou tried to situate, communism in the Platonic tradition. Communism, like Plato's forms, is absolutely above or beyond any kind of like particular private interests or psychopathologies and so on and so on. And in that sense, it's what's in common, which I don't necessarily agree with, per se. Disembodied is the right word. How the fuck do you explain this to normies? Hey, buddy, I'm not explaining this to normies. I'm explaining this to you, you fucking retard. Blunt, here's what I'm explaining to you, okay? What I'm explaining to you is that the thing that's going to get Joe Schmo's wheels turning in his head, wanting to study Marxism and communism more, is when he finds out that it's here. This is what's going to string him along. The fact that it's in the true Marxist is a big other. The real Marxist is a big other. And that his consciousness relative to this is clearly inferior and has some catching up to do. Because this is the accumulation of a rich dialectic of back and forth, trial and error, practice and theory, debate, criticism, self-criticism, yada, yada, yada. Culminating in this, okay? And he is going to realize, hey, I might have thought this in my head as a response to Marxism, but this already accounts for that. Clearly, I have catching up to do to understand this. So this is what makes Marxism something that's not just like the fanciful product of some kind of cult or personality. It's what makes Marxism something out there and, clearly reflective of something that is in the realm of the big other. And this is actually something you should critique Marxists about, because oftentimes Marxists rely upon the authority of an imaginary big other. You see it all the time on X. Marxists oftentimes rely upon, there being some kind of... Marxism has been confirmed by the scientists. Today the top universities are confirming and accepting Marxism. They delude themselves into thinking that the hegemony... the knowledge within the hegemony is Marxist and has a Marxist bent as a way to legitimize Marxism. Like God. No, not like God, okay? Cool. Not like God. Cool. I could tell you're not that curious, because if you were smart, you would think to yourself, what are some other examples of a disembodied collective logos? Well, airplanes. When you get on an airplane, you're presuming that there's some kind of expertise involved in the design, construction, and manufacturing of the airplane. And, that allows you to say, well, they know what they're talking about. Clearly, this plane is going to be safe. They know, whoever made it knows what they're doing. There's all sorts of ways in which you experience reality and society in this way, okay? And, usually you're not getting on a plane, and when someone tells you it's going to be safe, you're not going to sit there and say, oh, this is all, this all goes back to this one guy, Mr. Clean or something. I don't fucking... Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is the reason that we're being told that airplanes are safe. No, it's not Dr. Phil. There's some kind of disembodied collective logos that makes you trust flying on planes, and also makes you respect the authority of the state and politicians and laws and norms and conventions and routines and so on and so on. So this is just how reality is structured for human beings. So it's like trust. It's not just like trust. You're missing the point. I'm talking about as it concerns knowledge. More specifically, knowledge. Okay? Islam. Bro, just drop a 20. Just drop a 20. Just drop a 20, bro. Like, just pack it up. Drop a 20. Just drop a 20. Drop 20 gifted. I don't want to hear this shit. Pack it up, bro. Just drop a 20 gifted. What are we even talking about here? All right. You think China... China is a big... See, this is what's interesting. That China is the reason that disembodied collective logos is no longer disembodied. So the specter that's haunting Europe in Marx's time, this is what it was referring to, by the way, is no longer a specter. It has a body. It's China. China is an embodied collective logos. It literally is. It's an embodied collective logos. That's what China is. as a society. It's this embodied civilizational dialectic of how people relate to society and how they relate to each other and how they relate to their history and their future and so on and so on. But in any case, what about when society trusted the vaccine and the other half wasn't? Absolutely, precisely. There is a conflict. People are losing their ability to process or accept the reality of any disembodied collective logos. They're trying to embody it first and foremost in different personalities and private interests, which is a radical step in the direction of Marxism. What we thought was universal and so on is actually particular. It reflects the particular interest of a class. So it's a crude, false consciousness, the conspiracism, but it's a step in the direction of Marxism. But the problem is that Marxism itself is a disembodied collective logos. And that's why we have so much trouble. But that's also why people become interested in it. Yeah, Caleb's tried to fed jack at us many times. I don't care. I don't care, bro. This is how cults cope with themselves. A cult copes with itself by saying, the reason I'm failing is because, the CIA is preventing people from seeing how I'm the Messiah, and that's why. Like, I just don't care. If that's what makes you feel better about yourself, just continue thinking that. I could give you tangible examples of how I feel like intelligence agencies have actually thwarted. Like, we're just minding our business without any entitlement. And I could tell you how we do get thwarted and how we do get blocked. And it probably is intelligence agencies, right? But just because you're failing and no one wants to listen to you doesn't mean you're being blocked at all, okay? He says that we're evil. Yeah, bro, I don't care. I don't fucking care. All right. And by the way, the reason I brought that shit up in this example is because sometimes I see those tendencies and that mentality, because some former CPI people are in ACP. So that's baggage that needs to be left behind if you join ACP. You can't just CPI was ostracized and going against the synthetic left. Well, and we're ostracized and going against the synthetic left. Well, we're not doing it in the same way. Okay, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, people yearn for the collective logos to be embodied, and hence the proliferation of different cults and things like that. Kamran, what's up? I want everyone to focus on what I'm trying to communicate here, though, I want everyone to focus on the topic and shut the fuck up about nonsense, okay? So, they tried. This is what the Nazis tried to do. They tried to embody communism as Jewish. Absolutely, exactly. Because once you can embody the collective logos of Marxism into a Jew named Sheckelstein or something, and I can do this because I'm Semitic, okay? But once you can do that, once you can put a face on it and you can embody it in something, then this dialectical authority disappears. Suddenly, the dialectical process of the mind attempting to master the dialectical process by which this greater result comes to be ends, and it's simply dismissed and reduced to some, like, big-nosed Jewish guy, then it's somehow, it loses its ability to kind of contain contradictions. It suddenly just becomes a front for this vulgar individual, Jewish person or something, right? So that's why the Judeo-Bolshevism thing was so effective psychologically in combating Marxism in Germany. But in any case, the truth is that Marxism... Now, do I think Marxism is a disembodied collective logos? No, I think it has a concrete body. The concrete body is, for example, the Communist Party. There is a... This is bourgeois consciousness, okay? When that person in the chat was like, well, what about during the vaccine stuff? Dude, I'm talking about the bourgeois consciousness. Bourgeois consciousness regards it as the realm of a big other, right? But this is what also makes it compelling to people. This is how Marxism sneaks in through bourgeois consciousness to turn bourgeois intelligentsia into proletarian, people with proletarian consciousness, right? This disembodiedness and abstraction of the logos, collective logos, that is, in so many words, that's also a proxy for the commodity form. That's also a proxy for bourgeois democracy. It's also a proxy for bourgeois metaphysics. Absolutely it is. And the kind of noetic superstructure of bourgeois civilization. Absolutely it is. When Marxism can assume the authority of that in people's minds, it makes them start taking Marxism seriously. Which, and this is superior to a cult, right? But it's also inferior to proletarian consciousness, which is able to embody this kind of collective logos in something concrete, such as classes, class interests, and specific, tangible organizations and parties and movements and historical formations, and so on and so on. For example, China is an embodied collective logos, and it's not disembodied, it's embodied. But China is also not a cult, okay? It's a civilization. It has a dialectic. It has debate within it. It's open-ended. It has an open-ended fate. It has all of the qualities, collective qualities of the kind of disembodied bourgeois logos that make it dynamic and not parochial and petty. It's not like a petty nationalist society, but it is embodied in something particular and concrete. Haz, this is too difficult. I'm struggling to comprehend this. Yeah, I bet you are. I bet you are. All I can do is try. I've been doing this for years. I've tried to refine my teaching to make it more palatable for the retarded. But you know what people's problem is that when you're a pit bull and you bit a baby's head, you got to let go first. You won't loosen your grip. And the grip in question is this kind of this type of consciousness that people have, which is just... I am somebody who's cool, calm, and collected, but to be educated by me truly is to really go through an agonizing process of schizophrenia and psychosis, and sometimes I worry and wonder if I've actually driven people to schizophrenia. Because these are all the different ways in which, your presumptions, your psychological security system attempts to resist the truth. Your psychological security system would rather drive you crazy and schizophrenic than accept the truth. Like when a system is threatened by something external, one of the ways it resists that is by, like, turning inward and just cannibalizing itself. Which at least allows it to resist, you know, this foreign threat from without that it just cannot accept or come to terms with. And the foreign thing in question is the alienated, you know, the reality of the alien, the alienated essence of mankind, the alienated reality that we partake in. People do not want to accept alienation. They don't want to accept this alien other. So your mind has all sorts of ways of just trying to resist that fatal realization, you know. That, you know, you partake in this kind of alienated consciousness, which is collective, and that this alienated consciousness exists, really exists, and is something real. Like, it's not just the product of some twist and turn in discourse. It's irreducible. I don't know how to put it. But well, if you need a takeaway, the takeaway is very simple. One of the things that makes Marxism very compelling to people is that when Joe Schmo talks to a Marxist, he knows that this consciousness is coming from somewhere else. Now, Republicans can blame the university system, they can blame Obama, they can blame Karl Marx himself, they can blame any kind of personality or private formation or interest that they want, but at the end of the day, they're going to fail. Because Marxism is something that is shaped by history. And as long as history exists, Marxism is going to be compelling to people and be regarded as this big other that comes from somewhere else. Now, where does some people will say, well, it's Jewish, it comes from Jews. But that's not going to make it less popular or compelling or interesting to people. We should lean into the otherness of it. Yeah, I wonder why my name is Hazaldine and not fucking Jonathan Dingleberry. You know, I wonder why my name is... I love all the intelligent people who are like, oh, your name is Hazaldine and you're an American. You're trying to appeal to Americans. You should make your name Jonathan Dingleberry and put on fucking overalls and LARP as a fucking country boy. That's totally going to smuggle Marxism into America, right?